2 weeks before his inauguration as the President of the United States, Donald Trump has rattled the world with his statements on what he believes will be truly the United States of America. He has made it amply clear that he wants to redraw the map of the Western Hemisphere, and he has put out a map as well, which shows Canada merged into the United States of America. Days after he resigned as the Canadian Prime Minister, Trump and Elon Musk took a potshot at Justin Trudeau and reiterated their claim of merging Canada with America. At a press conference at Mar-a-Lago, Trump said that he would use economic force to annex Canada and remove the artificially drawn line between the two countries.
You get rid of that artificially drawn line, and you take a look at what that looks like, and it would also be much better for national security. Don't forget, we basically protect Canada. But here's the problem with Canada. So many friends up there. I love the Canadian people. They're great. But we're spending hundreds of billions a year to protect it. We're spending hundreds of billions a year to take care of Canada. We lose in trade deficits. We're losing massive. We don't need their cars. You know, they make 20% of our cars. We don't need that. I'd rather make them in Detroit. We don't need the cars. We don't need their lumber. We have massive fields of lumber. We don't need their lumber. We have to unrestrict them because stupid people put, restrictions on, but I can do that with an executive order. We don't need anything they have. We don't need their dairy products. We have more than they have. We don't need anything. So why are we losing $200 billion a year and more to protect Canada?
Now, the reaction from Justin Trudeau was one of outrage, who said that there isn't a snowball's chance in hell that Canada would become part of the United States. Trump supporter Elon Musk, meanwhile, roasted Justin Trudeau with this reply, and this is what he said. "Girl, you're not the governor of Canada anymore, so it doesn't matter what you say." Governor of Canada, of course, is something that Trump uses to refer to the Canadian Prime Minister. But roasts aside, Canada isn't the only country which Trump claims the USA would merge with itself. He has also not ruled out using military force to take control of the Panama Canal and Greenland, prompting a sharp retort from leaders of both regions, firmly stating that every square meter of their land belongs to them and that it is not up for sale. So why is Donald Trump suddenly talking about merging countries into America? Why are Canada, Greenland, and the Panama Canals crucial to the U.S. economy and security? And will Trump 2.0 see more wars, something that Donald Trump has himself refuted? Let's try and decode this for you on Global Mirror. On the broadcast, I'm joined by Terry Milewski. He's a senior Canadian journalist. I'm also joined by Ray Locker, journalist and author from the United States of America. Good evening and namaskar to both of you gentlemen. We're also expecting Mr. Vibhuti Jha, former Republican candidate for New York, to join us, as well as Pathikrit Payan, geopolitical analyst, to be with us shortly. Terry Milewski, let me begin with you. This has been ongoing between Donald Trump and Justin Trudeau. And now, of course, Elon Musk also roasting, weighing in on this entire issue. But jokes apart, how concerned is Canada as far as Donald Trump's claims are? Or do you just see it as, just another reason that Donald Trump has to provoke and irk Justin Trudeau?
Well, it's not being seen as just a joke. It's being seen as partly a joke, but partly very serious. Remember that Canada and everybody else has been through this before. We had the first Trump administration who did indeed follow through on his threats to impose tariffs on Canadian imports. And Canada strategically retaliated with carefully targeted retaliatory tariffs. And by target, I mean targeted on the districts and industries favored by Trump's donors and his political partners, Republicans in Congress, so that they were aimed at, you manufacture Harley-Davidson motorbikes, import those? Okay, we'll put tariffs on those, and pickles, and ketchup, and a range of particular, not each huge, but a range of particular industries which cause pain in the United States. Now, big thing, though, energy. Trump raves about how there's a $200 billion subsidy. He's talking about the U.S. trade deficit with Canada, and that $200 billion figure is complete nonsense. It's not even 100 billion. In fact, it's about 40 billion dollars in terms of the deficit. But if you take oil and gas out of it, the U.S. actually has a surplus in trade. So what he's saying about that is complete nonsense, if that matters. It may not matter. But imagine what's going to happen in the United States if gas prices go up. I mean, Canada exports something like 4 million barrels of oil per day, 4 million barrels a day,
Yes.
Canada to the US. What do you think is going to happen to gas prices due to the 25% tariff? Well, I think the short answer is there won't be a 25% tariff. And that when they see if the Canadian government is capable of taking action at the moment with a sort of paralyzed government with with a sort of lame duck prime minister, then we may see that there will be reduced and more targeted tariffs, perhaps on both sides. I don't expect to see the Canada joining the United States as the 51st state anytime soon, forever.
Okay. Okay. We've also got Mr. Vibhuti Jha and Mr. Pathikrit Pain on the broadcast. Good evening, namaskar to both of you gentlemen. Before I come to you, let me go across to Ray Locker. Ray, Donald Trump has said that merging Canada, Greenland and the Panama Canals is important for the security of the United States of America. Do you buy that argument? How do you see this entire statement after statement coming in from the next U.S. president?
Well, I view it with alarm, and of course I don't buy it. It's totally fabricated, and it's another example of the fantasy world that Donald Trump lives in. Look, people were saying that this is what we were going to get if we reelected him, and we're getting it now. He's not even president. And so there's no way Canada is going to become the 51st state. We will see tariffs, but we don't know what kind of tariffs there will be. It will be a problem for U.S. consumers because it will raise prices. Look, the Panama Canal has been run by the Panamanians since 1978, 1979 with no problem. It's not a security threat. And if the United States wants to be more involved in Panama, then it needs to be down there doing things economically, not threatening an invasion, which is just absolute insanity. And the same with Greenland. We have bases in Greenland. We don't need to control Greenland. We already have access there. And what would we do if we got it? It would cost even more money. So all of this is in this weird stew of psychosis that Donald Trump has. And guess what? In 12 days, we're going to own it.
President that's talking about purchasing and taking over Greenland. In 1867, you had President Andrew Johnson. That time, the U.S. had bought Australia. There was also talks of buying Greenland. That didn't fructify. That's another matter. But Donald Trump isn't the first person in the United States, not the first president, to talk about it.
Andrew Johnson is your best example. I mean, the guy was, guess what? The first president to be impeached. He was one of the people responsible for derailing
well,
large
that's the
parts
best
of
example from the United States of America in this context. There has to be a reference.
Fine, you can cite that as a reference. He would not be my best reference. He may have floated it, and around the same time, we did buy Alaska. But we didn't buy Greenland. We don't need Greenland. And Andrew Johnson has been discredited throughout U.S. history. So I would hardly cite him as an example.
Okay. Vibhuti Jha, do you want to comment on this? The fact that Greenland is also seen not just as a primary maritime strategic region, but also as a region that might help the U.S. counter China as far as the rare earth production is concerned, something that China has said earlier that it's not going to, go ahead with as far as its relations and trade relations with the United States is concerned?
Thank you very much for having me. The point here is this is a geopolitical play. Mr. Trump is notorious for being unpredictable. Nobody expected that he would make these statements or make the claim. And to have invited Trudeau when he went to Mar-a-Lago, he told him, why don't you become 51st state? It was a joke. And I agree with Terry and I agree with everybody. This is not going to happen. As one Canadian billionaire said, well, we will buy Alaska from you and including throw in Minnesota. The question is, yes, this is political lobbying going on. It's a geopolitical play. We indulge in trade negotiations to do things, and we try to occupy land. And nobody knows that better than India. That once upon a time, an extremely powerful and rich country was invaded and colonized by everybody else who came there. Our Indian resources were looted, and you know who all became rich. The British Empire became rich. The point of the matter here is that these kind of political plays go on all the time. China occupied Tibet. China occupied pieces of India. China is trying to control through its severe, suicide, what called, a very powerful word used, there's suicide contracts in which they clinch the land and other assets of another country. United States is also moving along in the same lines today. To make a claim on Greenland may be analogous to what happened to Alaska once upon a time. So think about it from that perspective. Geopolitically, nations like to expand their territory, either via trade or military might. Trump made a mention, military will not be used, but tariff as an economic tool will be used. So we are entering into uncharted territories, and you can call him a maverick or an idiot or a rabble rouser, but Trump is not an usual guy. And when he says something, he means something. So Panama Canal, for that matter, I've been there. It's an amazing engineering model. So to have given away Panama Canal to Panama for $1 and being charged, as he says, exorbitant amounts for US ships going sounds ludicrous. Where is the advantage? So in any kind of look at NAFTA itself, for example, Canada benefited immensely. Mexico benefited immensely. In any of these kind of a big trade agreements, the bigger partner always has to give more. That's the part which is very important. And now Trump is a businessman. He's trying to say, why the hell are we there at all?
Okay, let me get in Pathikrit on this. Pathikrit, how do you see this? Should we pass this off as a bizarre, quintessential Donald Trump being his maverick businessman self? Or would you see him as a very clever politician who's being very strategic in doing and saying what he's saying with the kind of geopolitical situation that the world faces today?
Shreya, first of all, there's a method in this madness. Whatever he is saying, he's just putting the ball in motion. There would be some deliberations for a few years, but eventually I'm sure what he said, they will try to do exactly that. See, of course, if you look at the Canadian map, there are two aspects to it. There are issues of illegal immigration that happens with the border. So the southern part of Canada, the provinces have an issue with immigration. Then there is an issue of Chinese influence increasing within Canada. I think America has warned Canada on these issues for quite some time. So far as the northern part of Canada is concerned, I think it's very clear that the Arctic is where the Americans are looking for the sovereign rights of Canada to be taken over, so that that great repository of rare earth minerals and everything else, including oil, can be explored. Now, let me tell you one thing. Canada might today talk about sovereignty. Some of this quite a bit of jitters among their politicians, but I think most of the politicians of Canada also are not very sure which way people will vote if there's a referendum tomorrow. And frankly, Canada for a long period of time have actually acted as the 51st state of the United States. It acts as a vassal state, it acts as a proxy, it does things which America tells them to do. There's so much of convenience and convergence of interest. There are many issues. For example, the arrest and detention of Huawei Chief Financial Officer Men Wangzhou, if I'm not mistaken, her name. She was detained in Canada for 3 years just because the Americans told them. So let me tell you, it's very clear. If tomorrow that bait is given that there are only two options, either you live the rest of the life with 25% tariff or be part of the great American country as they claim it, I don't know which way the Canadians will vote. We may not have seen these kind of things happening in the last few decades, but it doesn't mean that it's not going to happen tomorrow again, because the global reset of maps have started, whether we like it or not. If you look at Middle East, there are a lot of things happening, the geopolitical churning that is happening eventually. The ultimate objective is to change the maps and contours of certain countries. So if it happens in North America, we cannot rule it out.
Pathikrit, let me get in Terry Milewski to respond to you. Yeah. Terry, you want to respond to what Pathikrit is saying? Canadians acting as a proxy for Americans, whether, they're confused, whether they want to be Canadians or they want to be Americans, because they've been doing as the US has told them to do.
Well, they're not very confused. I mean, the polls suggest that maybe there are 11% of Canadians. I've seen the highest number I've seen is about 13%, are interested. It's a very vague question. Would you be interested in joining the United States? Well, so that kind of leaves going on 90% of Canadians not interested. So that's the first thing. The second thing is that it is, of course, correct to say that Canada and the US have frequently acted in concert. So do Western democracies all over the globe. So the UK frequently acts in concert. The UK and Canada and other Western allies, other members of NATO, Denmark, which makes an attack on Denmark over Greenland rather unlikely. They naturally act in concert. There's nothing sinister about that. There's nothing strange about Canada and the United States, both democratic countries, English-speaking democratic countries, English and French in Canada's case, that they act together. And people say, for example, well, Canada is subsidized by the United States because you don't have to spend much on defense because you're under the American nuclear umbrella. Well, yes, indeed. Just as Canada provides a buffer zone, you've got to fly over Canada. You come from Russia, you want to send your bombers over the United States, you've got to fly over Canada. And that takes a long time because it's a huge country.
Okay.
And so we benefit from our partnership with the United States, and the United States benefits a great deal from its partnership with Canada. The only other thing I'd add is that if you turn this question around, you were to do a poll in the United States, I don't think there's been one lately on this, but if you were to do a poll in the United States and ask how many Americans would be interested in Canadian free healthcare and gun control, I wonder if you'd get as little as 11%. I think you'd get a lot more than that. So I think this debate is only beginning. I don't think it's going to go anywhere. I don't think, it gives us all, it gives the chattering classes something to talk about. But there is no prospect, in Trudeau's words, not a snowball chance in hell, that Canada will become the 51st state.
Okay.
And I think that this is all just skirmishing over, there will be some tariffs, then there will be retaliatory tariffs. Then, as happened in 2018, after about a year of this back and forth, there would be a negotiated end to the tariffs. That's exactly what happened in the first Trump presidency.
Okay, we'll of course have to wait and watch how Trump 2.0 pans out between US and Canada. But Terry Milewski, one thing that Canadians can thank Donald Trump for is getting Justin Trudeau and Pierre Poilievre on the same page as far as defending Canada and its territory is concerned. Both of them have spoken against what Donald Trump has said, and they've said that, Canada will not go to the United States of America. But Vibhutija, Terry Milewski made an interesting point that this is not going to go anywhere and that this is just good for debate and discussion. When it's not going to go anywhere, if we take that into consideration, why make such statements? Why do you need to sort of create that atmosphere? In Hindi, we say mahal. Why do you want to create that sort of atmosphere just ahead of your inauguration then?
Well, politicians always need issues to talk about, right? So, and the greater the controversy, the time we spend on TV with you like this, right? So this was if this had not happened, we won't be here today. But I agree with Terry on that matter, that this is not happening. As it is, Canada is considered as the Northern Brothers of America, and National Basketball Association, National Hockey League, Canadian teams participate in American sports, American League. Canadian Football League is nowhere near American Football League. They are not allowed to play here. So there is a tremendous amount of dependence. Canada won't be what the country it is as part of G7 if it was not for the United States. The amount of foreign direct investment and collaborations and investments that have gone in Canada from America at the expense of the blue collar workers in America. The soul of America was lost when NAFTA produced significant amount of investments to Mexico and NAFTA and Canada without any territorial and boundary responsibility for checking immigration. That to me sounds ludicrous. And that's what is important here. A whole lot of things have to be attended. You may or may not agree with Trump's strategies or gameplay. I totally am with all of you on this matter. But Pathikrit is right. Territorial alignments will happen. Europe is the center for territorial ambitions. I coined the phrase by saying that Europe has a fetish with emotional settlement of territorial boundaries from time to time. No other country does that the way Europe does it. And they believe that the European problem is the global problem. Ukraine is an example that nobody has bought that argument. Ukraine is European problem and not an Indian problem or not an American problem. Oh, sorry, not any other country in the world. So the point of the matter here is that when Soviet USSR collapsed, so many more countries emerged. When Yugoslavia, Czechoslovakia vanished from the face of the map and the earth, new countries were created. So these territorial adjustments will happen from time to time through war or trade. We will see what happens on that regard. But so far as I'm concerned, I wouldn't want Canada to be the 51st state for all the good reasons that people are talking about. I don't want a Canadian healthcare system. I'm happy with American healthcare system. I don't want the gun principles of Canada. I'm happy with Second Amendment here. The reasons are very simple. It's too big a country size. And we do not want that political turmoil seeping into American arena. It is happy. Let them deal with their parliamentary system. We are happy with our presidential.
Okay. Ray Locker, what do you think of this? The fact that the two wars that are going on obviously have sort of redrawn contours of what it means to be a great power, an emerging power, and a superpower. And therefore, obviously, the United States of America under Donald Trump would want to reassert its power, its position in the geopolitical situation that the world faces. And that's why perhaps he's making the kind of statements that he's making.
I don't really see that. I mean, he's basically said that he wants Vladimir Putin to get what he wants in Ukraine. So he's going to roll over and let Russia take Ukraine. So we have to take over Canada to protect ourselves against Russia, or Greenland to protect ourselves against Russia or China. I mean, it doesn't make much sense to me. And so, I think a lot of what he's saying and doing now is really just totally off the wall. It doesn't have anything to do with the challenges that face the United States. And yeah, we're talking a lot about it because this is not something that's normal. This is not something that a president-elect of the United States has done in the past, or at least in the very recent past, like the last 100 years. And so we're running around worrying about what this person is going to do, who's going to be the next president of the United States in 12 days. And it's, very troubling to me.
Okay. Pathikrit, Trump has said that Carter signed a treaty of returning the canal zone to Panama after U.S. dominated it for 75 years, and that's why he lost. Now, this is, of course, a reasoning that he gave, and he did not rule out, interestingly, military takeover of Panama Canal and Greenland. And that is what perhaps is worrisome. Here's a person who said that under him there will be no wars in the world, and then you go on and make statements which will certainly create conflicts between countries.
No, but if Obama can get a Nobel Peace Prize after having largest number of conflicts during a peacetime during his tenure, so I don't see anything wrong if Trump does something opposite to what he has said. See, let me tell you one thing. What is Trump indicating? Trump is making it very clear that so far as North America and Central America is concerned, the sphere of influence will be only of the United States and no other countries. Canada might say that it doesn't allow the Russians to use the airspace to go to United States. But look at the level of Chinese interference and intrusion into the normal life of Canada. And that is where the Americans have a problem. There is an issue. And I think for quite some time, the Americans have been telling it to the Canadians that please get it sorted out. It hasn't been sorted out. So I think today what we are discussing, in the 1920s, if anybody had stated sometime to people in saying that one day a time will come that you will not be part of Bharatvarsh, they would have laughed it off. 25 years down the line, it were a separate country and a migration happened. So, it may not be. It may not be the way Trump is projecting right now that Canada would be a 51st state. But at the same time, you never know, there can be an Article 370 kind of an arrangement where foreign policy, financial issues and the military will be decided by United Washington and not anymore by the Canadian government, because de facto it is almost like that. So they will take their pound. Let me tell you one thing, Shreya, no disrespect to the country called Canada. I am not a Canadian or an American either. It is an overhyped and an overestimated country. It doesn't have any leverage to be part of G7. The only reason it is part of G7 is because of the Anglo-Saxon lobby and primarily that of United States. Otherwise, tell me who actually gives a damn who Justin Trudeau or the Canadian Prime Minister is. And nobody actually gives an importance. So basically, what I'm saying is this, again, no disrespect. Canada is being called the 51st state of United States because Canada has behaved like the 51st state of United States. That is the key reason. Canada, I don't know how much they can sustain as a country if tomorrow Trump says for the next 4 years, I'm going to create problem for Canada. That is the only thing. How it works out elsewhere, well, I'm not getting into that. Whether majority of the Canadians will vote for it, well, it's for Canadians to decide. But I think the jitters in the government of Canada is this, that like the mirror of the car where it says that things are what appear are closer than they appear, it's exactly like that. You might never know that there is an existential issue where Canada might remain a sovereign country, but for all practical purposes, whether it is access to the Arctic Circle or whether it is about deciding the immigration issues, eventually Washington will decide. And that's what I'm saying. In the last few decades, in the name of globalization, we have not seen a reset of maps, but it has started. We are looking at it in Middle East. We will see it is happening in Eastern Europe. So Trump being transactional will actually extract its pound. That if I allow Russia to take over part of Ukraine, I will exactly do something in here. And last but not the least, the sphere of influence of China in South America, Central America, and Canada is so overwhelming today that I think the Washington policymakers are having second thought of what to do. And last but not the least,
exactly what I was coming
like
to,
this,
Pathikrit. Pathikrit, before I wrap up, just a last bit to you, just the fact that you talked about Canada, of course, but there is Panama and Greenland also that Donald Trump is talking about. And obviously that has to be a clear message to China as well in the kind of equation that US and China have had under Donald Trump. And with China's, rising expansionism, there has to be a message there as well.
So I think, Shreya, it's very clear the sphere of influences are going to be clearly drawn out. America will stop becoming the global police as essentially it does during the democratic rule. And if tomorrow China does something in Taiwan or South China Sea, don't get surprised. Don't see that America having a hands-off policy. So far as Greenland is concerned, it's very clear. Number one, how much does Denmark pay to Greenland every year? It's only probably $1 or $2 billion. Tomorrow, if America says that I'm going to give you $30 to $40 billion annually and you become American citizen, I don't know how much the people of Greenland can refuse that offer. So that's what I'm saying. The sphere of influences are getting redrawn. What happens in the sphere of Russia will be decided by Russia. What happens in South China Sea or in Far East, I think the Chinese will have a last say. And that is what the indication from the Trump administration, even before he has taken over, seems. So global policing will stop, possibly, and this is something which might be a bloodless coup. Yes, there will be opposition to what has been what he said, but that is how things start. Discussions start first, probably 1 or 2 years down the line. We might be discussing something where the Canadians will be voting in 2030 in the American presidential system. So that is how decisions are taken. It is not about what I or somebody else feels like. Ultimately, it is about controlling resources. That is how the world has run for the last 200, 300 years. And eventually, The Arctic Circle, the melting of ice, the new shipping routes opening up, Russia having 19 bases in the Arctic region with America having none, and Canada not being able to explore it, absolutely zero exploration or exploitation of the resources. Do you think the Americans will let it be taken over by the Russians alone? I don't think so. Whether it is Greenland, whether it is Canada,
Okay,
or
so
Norway
we'll of
and
course
Russia,
have to wait and watch, Pathikrit, how this really pans out. I'm sure Terry Milewski completely disagrees with you on what you've said about Canada and, of course, how Donald Trump will pave his way through the Trump 2.0. But I'll have to leave it there. Donald Trump being Donald Trump, we can only wait and watch how the man goes about in his second term. Thank you very much to all of you gentlemen, Vibhuti Jha, Terry Milewski, Ray Locker and Pathikrit Pain for joining us on Global Mirror and sharing your perspective. With that, ladies and gentlemen, it's a wrap on Global Mirror. Thank you very much for joining us tonight. Goodbye. Up next is Sneha Koshi with Beyond the Headline.